You know, I was an insomniac my whole life. I had anxiety, panic attacks, and I learned to live with all this stuff. After I transitioned, I sleep like a baby, and I have no anxiety. So clearly there are physiological implications of not being authentic. And many people come to me and say, I don't understand transgender. Neither do I. Don't ask me to explain it to you. I spent 40 plus years trying to figure it out, and I didn't figure it out. I'm Christine Hallquist. I'm running for governor in the state of Vermont.
Welcome to What I've Learned, and we're here on the National Mall in DC because it was here back in January 2017 when hundreds of thousands of men and women came out for the Women's March.
This is what democracy looks like! This is what democracy looks like!
It feels like I'm on a high. I feel like it's like a big rush of energy.
I hope that they take back with them the spirit to run for office, to support the people that need to be in office, because I think we got here because we stopped caring. We became complacent.
But that wasn't just one day of protest. It turned into this amazing movement where you now have record numbers of women running for Congress in 2018. And among that crowd that day in January was a woman called Christine Hallquist. Now, she was just a businesswoman in Vermont, but she's now running to become governor of Vermont.
When we Vermonters team up for our common good, we can deliver more and better services without raising cost.
And not just that, she's hoping to become the first transgender person elected governor in American history.
When I was in 8th grade, the Monsignor for our church called my parents and said, "We think David," that was my name then, needs an exorcism.
Because what? Because you were questioning too much?
Because I was questioning too much. From the far back as I can remember, I knew I was different because I loved being a girl, doing girl things. And I got beat up every day going to school. I got beat up by the teachers at school, and I got beat up in the way. I just got beat up every day. I was
physically beaten up by the
Oh yeah, physically beat up because I was effeminate. I didn't play the games that everybody else played. And I always knew those beatings. I never took them personally because I said they just don't know who I am. But when I hit 9th grade, when I went to high school, I realized I need to start acting because I'm afraid my schoolmates are going to kill me. So it was a survival thing. So I learned how to act like a man. And it worked perfect pretty much my whole life. You know, I had an incredibly successful career, doing all kinds of amazing things.
But you felt you were acting the whole time?
I was acting oh, absolutely. When you've acted your whole life, you lose complete sense of who you really are. It's down there somewhere. But you have to shut off all your emotions. You know, you don't cry, you don't feel emotional extremes. So I was in this real tight bandwidth of emotions. But the real issue came when I hit my late 40s, and I had these 3 wonderful children. But I realized they didn't know the most important truth about me. And my wife knew this truth, and we were going to take it to my grave.
How did she know? How did that come about?
About 6 years into the marriage, she discovered my stash. There's this interesting thing that at the youngest age, you know, I was fortunate enough that one of my young friends who was a girl, parents owned a women's clothing store. Okay. So we'd go play down in the basement with all the different clothes, and I'd take clothes at home. So it had this stash of clothes, and then you'd get guilty and you say, okay, I'm going to throw all my clothes away. Purge, we call it purge. You know, I purge my clothes. I'm going to try to not do this anymore. But then slowly clothing would creep back in. I did this probably 11 times. And then I realized, this is costing you too much money. Stop the purge nonsense.
It's a pricey thing.
Yeah, it was just too expensive. Eventually you realize, I can't purge this out of me. You know. So my wife discovered my stash 6 years into the marriage. She thought it was some kind of fetish. Oh, this will go away. It's just some strange thing. So once she discovered the stash, there was a level of freedom I had. I said, okay, I'm going to get dressed up while I play piano. So I had this great time, 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. every day where I practiced. I was a classical pianist, practiced classical. I'd be dressed up, being who I am. You know, for these 2 hours, I can be the person that's in here.
And that must have been empowering?
It was very empowering.
Yeah.
It was
and a relief.
And a relief. And I thought it would work to my death.
Yeah.
But when I started having these guilt feelings about my children, I decided it's really important for me to be honest with my children. I can't go to my grave without them knowing who the real me is. And I was sure I was going to lose my job. So on December 2nd, 2015, I transitioned from man to woman. An amazing thing happened. Vermonters welcomed me with open arms. Vermont has always been a land of opportunity. This is where I made a life with my family where I taught my children to ski, and where I now take my grandchildren fishing. We support each other in Vermont. That is one of the core beliefs in our state that makes us so strong. And when I came out as a transgender woman, Vermont welcomed me with open arms.
What do you feel you've learned from the transition in terms of being a CEO?
Oh.
About how people interact with you when you're a man and when you're a woman?
My middle daughter, about a week after I transitioned, I had dinner with her, and she said, how's your transition going? I said, well, I think I'm experiencing transphobia. You know, I was in this meeting with these CEOs, and I said something in the morning. They didn't hear me. It was kind of unusual. Said something later, they didn't hear me. In the afternoon, one of the other CEOs said something. The other one said, oh yeah, Christine said that this morning. My daughter says, that's not transphobia. Welcome to being a woman. You know, the other thing that happened that first week was a stranger on the street told me to smile. Even worse yet, it said, smile, sweetie. What the hell are you telling me to smile for? I don't even know you. That never happened as a man. Never as a man did I have some stranger come up and say smile. It happens all the time now.
Do you feel in some ways that you've actually probably experienced sort of the everyday sexism which goes on?
Yes.
More so than transphobia?
Oh yeah, even in the most forward-thinking men, there's language in there that is the language of gender hierarchy.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that that experience really talks to me about what it's like to be in a marginalized community. Now, the transgender community, I think, is probably one of the most marginalized communities. And with that comes lack of self-confidence. You know, it's all those things that burden when you've been beaten down all these years. So, you know, a lot of people who are bigoted and biased will say, well, you know, I pulled myself up via bootstrap. Yeah, but you started out as a white man. You can't say that.
Do you ever wish you'd done it earlier, or can you just never think of it in that way?
No, I don't think I could never think of it that way. I'm so happy with the journey that I've had. If I came out at a young age, I wouldn't have these 3 wonderful children. My spouse wouldn't have married me. You know, I do feel guilt about the dishonesty. I wish I was more honest. I don't know. See, it gets confusing because if I was more honest, I wouldn't be here today. So it's really tough to think about it.
Do you think it's easier for young trans people today, to be honest?
I don't think there's been much progress personally. I think Vermont is a unique state. We have some of the best transgender protection laws in the country. Thank God we do. But there's only I don't know the number, but there's certainly well less than half of the states that have protection laws. You have to start with protection laws. We have so far to go, and what's happening in Washington, which is why I'm running, really gets down to why I'm running for governor. I see the pendulum was swinging positively. What made us great was we were aspirational. We were constantly getting better in terms of civil rights. That pendulum has taken an incredible reversal under the current administration here in Washington.
Was there one main reason why you decided to run for governor?
November 9th, 2016, I woke up very depressed. Stayed in depression until about January 20th. I came down here to Washington, marched with 650,000 others in the Women's March, very inspired, but things continued to get worse. Really, the moment I decided to run for governor is when I heard these four young women. They were seniors in high school. They were Muslim. They were talking about did slam poetry about their experience of being Muslim in Vermont. And up until that moment, I believed that Vermont was a loving cocoon. The reality, I cried. And the stories they told were like, I can't sit by and watch anymore this division. I need to bring Vermont back to a place where we welcome all.
It seems that at the moment, especially with your politics, when you talk about minimum wage and single-payer healthcare, that there is this sort of movement, similar to Bernie, another Vermonter, towards sort of more a progressive agenda.
Yeah, and here's why that's important. And I think so I'm a big person on solving climate change, getting rid of these carbon-rich fuels. Meanwhile, I have a good friend of mine who was running an electric cooperative in Kentucky. His whole cooperative was depending on coal mining. And so as people stopped using coal, people lost their jobs. Families became divided. You know, people started going towards substance abuse. Communities were falling apart. By working to move away from a carbon-rich economy and not building the safety nets for those people that lose their jobs, we leave them in desperation. That's why it's so important to have living wages. That's why it's so important to have Medicare for all, it's a healthcare system, because we don't want to leave people out there. And I think about this, we've got a big one coming in this country all across the world. When we talk about driverless vehicles, Think about all the people that are going to be out of work because of driverless vehicles. And if we don't have safety nets for them, what are they going to do? I travel this country, and even in Vermont, we're seeing more homeless than I've ever seen before because we haven't built those safety nets. That's the part we're missing. That's the part that the Democrats should be standing for, and we're standing for it now. The United States spends 18 cents of every gross domestic product dollar on health care. European countries spend 8 and 9 cents. It's that simple, folks. There's a better system. So making money on people getting sick and dying is absolutely wrong. I don't care where you are in the country. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but the most important thing we can do is be true to ourselves in our beliefs. So I will be very clear. I'm not afraid of not getting elected. I'm not afraid of getting elected. I'm just going to tell the truth as best I know of.
How did it feel when, Liberals had a go at you within Vermont for being authentic about your own story?
That was ridiculous. It was, it just felt ridiculous. Like, oh, you're telling me that I can't say I'm a transgender woman. And in fact, I even got a little bit of trouble with the transgender community because some people, the younger people have a different experience than and they want to pass, right? Sorry, I'm 62 years old. I'm not passing. There's no fooling people here. And I also will recognize, when I talk about my experience as a woman, I've only been a woman 3 years. I haven't been a woman my whole life. I can't imagine, my limited experience with being a woman has taught me a lot of lessons. But I can't claim that I was a woman my whole life. So again, it goes to what's the truth here? Truth is, I'm a transgender woman. I've been a woman legally for 3 years. Now, maybe mentally, it's been my whole life, but I didn't get to live it that way. So I don't have those same experiences. I only have my experience. That's all I can talk to.
We've spoken a lot about your personal story and about transitioning. Do you ever, in a way, tire of having to tell that story? Do you, in some ways, want to be, yes, I am a transgender woman, but I want to talk about policies, I want to talk about politics? Do you feel that that's always going to be at the forefront, though?
I'll tell the story as many times as I'm asked, because I'm in service to others. It's not about me. Funny, when I was working with a company years ago, I was talking about how the company needs to look. That's what leaders do. Leaders should tell their story and talk about vision. And they said, how many times are you going to tell this story? I said, many times I have to. It's really, someday, I don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime that I'm going to stop telling the story. I'd love to stop telling the story. But I'll stop telling the story when people will no longer be interested. That will be a great thing.